Hello and welcome to another tips, tricks, and tutorials. And this should be a relatively quick one, but it is something that new people often don't really have an idea about. So I thought I have to do this anyway, so let's just take a quick moment to show people how to deal with boning. Now we try and keep this channel family friendly. So kids, ask your parents why they're laughing every time I say the word boning. And that's the last joke we're going to make about it, right? Good. So anyway, what is boning? I said that was the last joke. This is boning. Let's go to the overhead cam. And as this is a little bit crooked, oh well, too late now. So boning is basically, there's several different types of materials you could use for boning. This is some of the most common. This is just plastic, and it's really just like a woven plastic strip. And what it's used for is reinforcing stuff, fabrics, in our case foam, but anything soft that needs to hold a shape. That's where boning is used. It's probably known most commonly in corsetry. The whale boning is a famous from like Victorian clothing. I use a lot of whalebone in the corsetry, but that's what it is. It's just there to like hold a shape. And specifically, the way it's used a lot in puppet building is when we have a shape that is meant to be round, but there are other forces working on it to make it not be round. The classic example, and where I use boning the most, is in something like this. This is a body insert for a puppet. This happens to be a greebly. This is very much a Kermit style body. This is a simplified version of a Kermit body, actually. There's much less to this than there is an actual Kermit body. This is just 2 pieces, whereas a Kermit body is 8 pieces, FYI. But nevertheless, what we've got here is, of course, the entrance and exit of where the performer's arm goes through. Now, when we put this inside the fabric skin, what's going to happen, of course, particularly if the fabric is nice and tight, as it should be, is it's going to like warp and deform this foam, because this is foam, it's very soft. So what we want to do is have something in there that's more rigid than the foam that will kind of help it hold its shape. And I'll do this very often with a shape like this. That generally speaking, sometimes you don't need it, but it's always good to do something like this. So the trick, of course, is how do you measure it? How do you put it in? So that's what we're going to go over today. Now, types of boning. Just a quick aside. This is the kind that I get and that I use most often. This is just a woven plastic, and I'll bring it up close to the camera. So you can get, because this one will autofocus in theory. There we go. So you can see how it's got like, it's just like a woven grid pattern in there. In theory, if you have a very strong sewing machine, like an industrial sewing machine or heavy duty sewing machine, you can sew right through this. So this is, I wouldn't advise it, because I mean, I have broken needles on this kind of stuff, and generally speaking, we don't really need to. If you do need to stitch, because you can also put this stuff in just fabric, obviously. This is closer to the stuff that you want to get, this featherlight boning. It's different than this in that it is one solid thin piece of plastic, but it is in kind of a fabric jacket. So let me just show this close to the camera. And as you can see, what we've got is a piece of plastic in this kind of fabric sleeve. And then what you can do is you can actually, once you've got this to the right size, let's say that, you can take this off or seal it off in some way, and then you can actually stitch onto the fabric part. And that's really helpful for doing things like sack puppets. because sack puppets, generally you want them to hold their shape, but there's not a lot of foam under there, right? It's really just a big bag of fabric. So that's a good way of putting several rings of various sizes inside a sack puppet to give it some shape, but will also not add a lot of weight. I mean, it's called feather light for a reason. But it will add volume and help hold a shape rather than just a big bag of floppy fabric, right? But this is not what we're using today. This stuff is actually considerably more expensive than this stuff, and since we're not going to be sewing onto it anyway, we don't really need to worry about that. But what we are going to be using is known around these parts as danger honey. This is barge industrial contact cement. I have given the safety lecture so many times I feel like you probably don't need it, but if you're new to puppet building, you will probably see people talking about barge particularly, but there are other brands of industrial contact cement. This stuff is genuinely dangerous. You do not want to breathe it in. You do not want to touch this with your hands. That being said, it is also kind of indispensable. There's no real replacement for this. There are lesser types of adhesives, but nothing will do the job like this stuff will, or brands similar to this. So use it as long as you can treat it with respect and take the appropriate safety precautions. The safety precautions are: 1, gloves. Always wear gloves. Get yourself, so you're going to need these anyway, so always have a supply of hygienic gloves ready to go. 2, a respirator that uses, I can't remember, I don't know how it's pronounced actually, it's like the Neosh, I believe. It's the kind of thing that like painters will wear, this kind of thing. Those of us who have been through the pandemic probably understand that this is one of those things that you just want to filter out all of this stuff. And that there are various levels of that. You want the stuff that's for industrial chemicals. And that's generally, you can just pick these up in hardware stores and stuff. They're not hard to find. And the other is, let me see if we can go to the wide cam. You can just barely make out past the puppet there. I've got the window open and I've got a fan in the window, and the fan is blowing out. It's taking the air that's in here and blowing it outside. So we've got ventilation going on. So if you can do all of those things, it is quite safe and advisable to use industrial contact cement. If you can't, you're going to have to do something else, like, I hate to say hot glue, because hot glue is actually dangerous in and of itself for these kind of applications. But if you can't, if you're just in a space that you like, you're working at your kitchen table or something like that, you definitely don't want this stuff near anything you're going to eat. You're going to have to figure out some other way of gluing stuff together that will last. There's fabric glues and stuff, there's all kinds of other adhesives. I couldn't name what they are off the top of my head because this is just what I use, because this is how you build professional puppets. That's what it comes down to, is there's no actual substitute for the good stuff. I wish there were, believe me. I don't like you. I hate putting the mask on. I don't want to do all this stuff, but you have to. Otherwise, you will suffer serious health consequences. So, but that being said, if you can just follow those simple safety instructions, it's perfectly safe to use, and you should not be afraid of it, and you should not try and avoid it either, because there is no other substitute. So just treat it like any other tool, treat it with respect, and you'll be good. So, that being said, is it much stronger? What are the benefits? Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I am reading chat, FYI. This is being recorded during a live stream. And it's a good question, so I'll address it. Yes, this stuff is, you can find this most often at leatherworking places, and this is used by people who repair shoes to hold shoes together. So yes, this stuff will hold like nothing else. And as a result, the durability is off the charts. To a degree that, particularly with something like a puppet, it undergoes a lot of stresses, right? There's a lot of weak points, and so you're going to need something that's going to last under repeated repetitive stresses, right? This kind of thing is the only thing that will do it. There are other types of contact cement and stuff like that you can get that aren't industrial, and they will not work well. The puppet will eventually develop faults quite quickly, if they'll work at all. So, unfortunately, that is just the way it is. And believe me, I have tried everything. There is a reason why there are so many bottles right here. I've got all kinds of adhesives. Nothing will hold the puppet together like industrial contact cement. It's just the right thing to do because it is the strongest. That is absolutely a good question and the only answer. And I wish it wasn't, believe me. I would love for there to be something else. There are like lesser, like ones that have lesser fumes, even in the same brand. I think Barge makes one that's a low fume. They still don't work as well, but they'll probably work better than just like go to the craft store and get some kind of contact cement there. You want this stuff that's actually used by professionals. I mean, they're called professional puppets for a reason, right? But yeah, so anyway, that's what we're gonna do. So the first step, before we get to the scary part, it's not scary, I'm just kidding. Like I said, treat with respect and you're good. The first step before we get there is actually figuring out what do we want to do with the boning. So let me illustrate that. Let me put this back here. So what we want to do is we want 2 rings of boning. For something like this is very standard. Generally speaking, for a body insert, you're going to want 2 rings, right? We're going to want one at the neck and one at the base. And so getting the right diameter is essential for this. You want it as close as you possibly can, and measuring will get you kind of there, but the thing about measuring is this is soft materials, right? This is going to move and shift and stretch and compress and all that kind of stuff. So you really just kind of have to feel this out. Hello, Indies Keep, I see you. I'm shooting a tutorial video. Every time. I'm not going to edit any of that stuff out. Hi, thank you, welcome, as usual. The regulars are showing up. So what we're going to do is you kind of just have to feel out what the right diameter is. But I do have a process for that, so I'll illustrate that now. So the first thing we're going to do is figure out what the diameter should be, and then we're going to tape them together. And the tape that we are going to use for that is this. This is gaff tape. And gaff tape, you want to use this, and you do not want to use, this is another one of those, turn the chair around backwards and get serious. Don't use duct tape for this kind of thing. Duct tape has lots of uses and is fantastic, but this is not one of them. Duct tape does not have good longevity. Duct tape has good tensile strength, but it does not have good longevity. This stuff, gaff tape, is similar to duct tape in that it's a woven fabric basically that has an adhesive on it. But this stuff is, it's not a polymer that's on top like it is on duct tape. Duct tape is basically like a flexible plastic. But what happens with duct tape is it dries out and it will like stretch and stuff over time. This stuff won't. This stuff is used most often in, the reason it's called gaff tape is it's for gaffers working in like the film industry and the stage. This is when you need to tape like a mic cable down onto the floor or something. This is the stuff that you'll use. Very common, you can get this all over the place. But this kind of fabric-based, high-strength tape is what you want to use if you're going to tape anything for the inside of a puppet. And we are going to tape the boning together to make a ring. So, back here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to prep 2 pieces ready to go. And since we don't need it all that wide, I'm actually going to tear it like that and just make it like a strip. And I don't know, you want like a couple of inches. It's got folded, so I'm just going to tear that bit off. So there we go. We just got like strip of a couple of inches. I'm just going to stick this onto the side here and just let that sort of dangle there, and it'll be ready to go. And likewise, another strip of the same size. And these will just be, you know, handy and ready to go for when we get our ring made. So that's it. That's all the gaff tape that you need. Not a lot. Oh, also you're going to want something to mark with. I'm just going to get a Sharpie. So, and you're going to want some junk scissors, not the good fabric scissors, some junk scissors to cut the boning with. So it doesn't really matter if you start at the top or the bottom. So we'll just start with the thing that's closest to us. So what I usually do to start is I'll just kind of make a ring like that, and I'll sit it in there, and I'll make sure it's slightly bigger than the hole it's going in. So like maybe an inch or two bigger than where we want it. And I'll just kind of feel where that is and then cut off that much. It's gonna be a little bit of wastage here, but not a lot. So now that we've got this, which is, you know, a real approximation, now we're gonna start finessing it. So what I'm gonna do is kind of overlap it like that. I know it's a little tough to see, but we're gonna sit it inside here, and we've got the two edges. Let me get this close to the camera so you can actually see what I'm doing. So we've got one inside the other, like that. And what I'm doing is I'm basically creating like a little, almost like a lens aperture that we will close so there's a gap, and then we will just kind of naturally let that slide open until it just touches the edges. And sometimes you go a little bit wider. You want a degree of firmness and tension in there. So when we've got that, hold it real tight, and that's where we're going to take our marker, and where the two meet, we're just going to make a line. So now we've got all of this extra. We don't need all of this extra, so we're just going to trim that off to about 1 centimeter and maybe 1/2 inch. For those of you who speak American. I'm Canadian, FYI. I know we got some new people in the chat. In case you were confused by that remark. So now we've got just like a little bitty bit that's onto the end here. So we're going to, once again, because we have that mark, we know exactly where we want this. Now, because this is just a thin plastic edge, we don't want this rubbing against the performer's arm, because the performer's arm is just going to go up through the middle of it. So we don't want any kind of sharp edges. So what we're going to do is take our tape and we're going to put it across that seam on the inside first. And we're just going to make sure we cover that up with the gaff tape. And I did that slightly wrong. There we go. And then we'll fold it over, and then we just kind of wrap it around. Basically, you just want to cover up any of the ends. You want to seal them off on both the inside and the outside, but the inside is more important. So there we go. We just have our little ring of boning. That's it. And that is literally it. And so now we have a nice bit of boning that will sit exactly in the aperture right there. So we're just gonna do the same thing on the bottom. Turn that over, and it'll be easy to tell which one's which because the neck is smaller than the base. So super easy. This was the part that I struggled with when I started, was like figure out how big do you make this, because I was making rings like this, and then I'd try and stick them in and they'd either be too big or too small. This is the method I figured out for sizing it exactly to this particular body insert. So just going to eyeball, go a little bit bigger. I'm going to stand up for this because it just makes it a little bit easier for me to see. I know I'm off camera, but you can enjoy my lovely shirt. Okay, that's good. We're just going to let it open up and let it sit naturally as it wants to. This isn't going to need much trimming at all. I eyeballed that really good. Okay. So there's that. Mark it. Yeah, we only need to trim off a little tiny bit. Look at that. Just do that over the garbage can. And it doesn't really matter if you go this way or this way. You're going to have it. It's going to be the same either way. So you just want to make sure that you get the interior covered up. Like so. And then we can wrap it around. I'm off camera a little bit there, but there we go. It's like plate spinning, keep track of so many various things. Okay, there we go. There's our ring of boning for the bottom. And we'll just check the size once more. Yep, that looks good. Here we are. Okay, so now comes the fun part. Now we bust out the danger honey. So let's get this out of the way. And we're going to get our gloves wherever I put our gloves. Where did I put our gloves? Did I put them back here? I think I put them back here. Silly me. Are you paying attention, me? And of course, if you're me, you then have to remove your jewelry because you ain't getting latex gloves over this. Let me tell you. Okay. So gloves first. We've already got the fan in the window. Do the Frankenfurter thing. And yes, make sure I got new ones. I do try and use these as many times as I can, just for economic reasons, frankly. But you do want to change these out fairly often. I mean, they are disposable. So okay, there we go. And so the next step is where it gets weird for the stream because I gotta put the mask on. All right, mask is on. Hopefully you can understand me. So we got gloves, we got the mask, we got the ventilation. Here we go. I'm going to get a piece of paper to put down so I don't get glue on my work surface. And we're going to get out our barge here. And this bottle is getting kind of old, so it's a bit thick. So we're going to put glue around the rim on the inside and then around the boning. I generally do the foam first. So let's do that. And I just gotta hold it down, and then I'm just painting around the edge of the inside. And don't use a lot. You want to be able to see it, but not have big, wet, gloppy puddles. A little bit will do. I just want a thin coat. And on the bottom. Hi Dylan, I can see you in chat. I'm shooting a tutorial, so FYI. Hello, nice to see you. We'll be done soon. Okay. Like I said, pink fur here. Where'd that come from? Probably the pink fur puppet. Okay, so there we go. We've just got thin coat around the edge, just like that. So we're just going to set that aside. Now this is where it gets a little tricky because you're going to get glue all over the place. So you just want a thin coat around the exterior. So what I usually do is I hold it on the taped bit, and I'll paint all the way around until I get just to the taped bit, and then I'll just kind of move it like that. It's a bit fiddly. You want to avoid getting glue all over your hands, even though you've got gloves on. But again, thin coat. Don't get it all gloopy. If you get a bunch on all at once, just keep brushing and thin it out. A little gluing music, Maestro. I should have theme music for Barge. I promise I'm not getting any kickbacks. I wish. Hey Barge, send me some free glue. I'll do like a whole sponsored commercial for you. Will work for glue. This stuff is not cheap. FYI. All right, we are, oops, a little too much there. Almost ready to go. So, once you've got a nice thin coat of Barge on both your rings and on the top and bottom, you're going to want to let it dry a little bit. So in order to expedite that process, first of all, let's make sure this is nice and closed. We don't need this anymore. We are going to keep the mask on for a little bit just to let the room air out. But I'm just going to take a hairdryer and just going to dry this a little bit. You want it to be slightly tacky. You don't want it completely dry, but you don't want to put it on wet to wet either. Okay, you also don't have to rush this part. You've got working time. This stuff will stay viable for quite a while. Like, I think upwards of an hour or so. You should still be okay. As long as it doesn't dry completely, you're good. So, now that we've let that sit, the room has aired out. I am going to, actually, I'm going to leave the gloves on. I'm going to take the mask off. So, one sec. Oh, I can talk much better now. Now, how and where you start can matter. It depends on the shape of the thing. There's all kinds of, you're just gonna have to experiment with this. What I usually do is I figure out where the back is, and in this case it's relatively symmetrical, so we're just gonna designate this as the back seam. And that's where I put the taped part. So again, I gotta stand up for this because it's easier for me to see. Let's get this more on camera if we can. I'll start by kind of sticking the back part in, just like that. And then we want to keep it relatively even. So you just kind of fit it in, and it's okay. Don't squeeze it, but like just kind of place it. And let the foam just like touch it. And it'll hold. So there we go. When it's in place, when you like it, that's when you go around and you really give it a good pinch. And that's what will lock the glue into place. It's contact cement. It works by physical pressure. So you can shift it around and move it right up until the point that you have it where you want it, and then you pinch it closed. So there we go. There's the ring on the top, and then we'll just do the bottom. Same way. This can be tricky to just sort of fiddle with at first. Getting it in there as the glue wants to grab it can be a bit of a pain, but just keep playing with it. You'll get it. And there we go. That is it. Done. So now we've got some boning in our body insert. And I'm going to take the gloves off now. The final trick, let's just have a look at this first. So this is where we are. It's all blown out from the window being open, but this will now, like, this has got some shape retention, right, at the top and bottom, and so the middle will be fine because of that. Now, if you have something that is larger and that you want to retain the shape throughout the whole thing, you may have to put more rings in. So what will often happen on a very large form is you'll make your shape, and then before you put the rings on the either top or bottom, you'll actually cut it in half and then put a ring and then glue it back together. And that way you'll create sort of like a latticework structure on the inside. I should probably not block my face. But now that we've got that, then we can put it in the puppet. So I guess we'll go to the overhead camera again to do that. Let me get this out of the way. And so all this is there's a foam skull in here, and this is all attached, and this is just empty fabric. As you can see, this is just big old fabric tube, basically. I mean, it's a shaped tube. But what I usually do is I'll grab it like this at the back, and I'll figure out where the back seam is, and we'll just kind of match up where the back seam is, and then we'll just kind of slide this over. Now, thankfully, this is more or less symmetrical, so we don't have to worry too much about getting it exactly right, just as long as it looks okay once it's in. But with something a little bit more precise, you're probably going to need to fiddle with it a bit more and kind of shift it around. That's pretty close, though. That's not bad. That will do just fine. And there we go. So now, There we go. So we have our nice, this is, and it needs a little bit of grooming here, of course, but and now we've got this really nice body form, and this will hold its shape. And it looks quite fleshed out, but this weighs nothing. This is perfect for a performer because you want it to weigh as little as possible. And this is one of the reasons what we use something like boning, or a very light plastic boning as well. There is steel boning. Don't use that stuff for a puppet, at least, unless you're making a really big puppet. But yeah, there we go. There is how to put boning in your puppet. So that will do it for this one. So thank you, as always, for watching. Stay tuned for more tips, tricks, and tutorials video, operationpuppet.com for all of the links, as always, and we'll catch you next time.